Okay, we are live. Thank you and welcome to the SSE Global Dialogue. I appreciate everybody joining from all parts of the world. I'd like to introduce James Zahn, who is the chair of the SSE Governing Board and who will be moderating this session and delivering some opening comments. James, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anthony. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone from different parts of the world. Welcome to World Investment Forum and welcome to this panel, the Global SSE Dialogue. It is really a great pleasure for me to now work with this panel, and these eminent members of the panel are also members of the UN Sustainable Stock Exchange's Independent Advisory Committee. Today, I'd like also to welcome the new members. The members we have, that was Sandy, Nandini, Tajinder, that has been for quite some time. Now we welcome Lombu Chai, and also Olga Candillo, and Emmanuel Niran Kindi. So these are the new members. And Mr. Niran Kindi also represent the IFC. So welcome on board as the new members. Over the past decade, the UN Sustainable Stock Exchange Initiative's flagship event has been this biannual global dialogue. And this is the largest global gathering of stock exchanges CEOs exclusively devoted to sustainable finance. And this year, the global dialogue takes the form of a discussion among the members of the SSE's Independent Advisory Committee. So the members of this advisory committee have been carefully selected for their understanding of the role of market actors in promoting sustainable development in their commitment to sustainability and their understanding of the benefits of collaboration across the ecosystem. So when the SSE was first established just over a decade ago, I think Sandy remembered that very well, that we were together at Rio and with Anthony had a very serious conversation. At that time, we were just beginning to explore what exchanges could do to promote and support sustainable development. In past decade, we have seen the SSE membership grow to over 100 exchanges from 5 founding members at that time. In fact, it was 4.5 because the Cairo Stock Exchange was absent because of the flight delay. But over half of the SSE partner exchanges now provide ESG disclosure guidance to the market, produce their own sustainability report, and offer training on ESG issues to their markets. So over a third have a dedicated sustainability bond segment to support the mobilization of finance. The SSE continues to support exchanges in their efforts. Since 2021 alone, the SSE published together with the WFE a guidance for derivatives exchanges on how to promote sustainable development. And that's thanks to the great collaboration with Nandini leading the WFE. And this marks a new milestone for the SSE. And this week, we welcome derivative exchanges as members of the SSE for the first time. Working with Mark Kearney, the UN Special Envoy on Climate Action and Finance, as well as London Stock Exchanges and also Joburg's exchanges, the SSE also published earlier this year a model guidance on climate disclosure and an associated action plan to make markets climate resilient. The SSE continues to work with Mark Kearney to assist exchanges who are making a net zero commitment as part of the Glasgow Financial Alliances for net zero. And this includes the Singapore exchanges, one of the first in the world to make such a commitment. So congratulations to Lo Mutier, who is with us today. The SSE has also deepened its technical assistance work, building on its partnership with the IFC. Now we have the vice president here, which was established at the last World Investment Forum in 2018. SSE and IFC are currently providing training to issuers around the world on climate disclosure. So more than 27 markets globally have asked for this training, from the largest in North America and Europe to emerging markets in Central Asia, Africa, and South America. So our partnership with the IFC also extends to work on gender equality. Together, we are launching a new online database that tracks the gender balance of boardrooms in markets around the world. And we are collaborating on a joint SSE-IFC guidance on how exchanges can provide gender equality in their markets. There are just a few of the projects that SSE is working on now. I'd like to take this moment to thank the SSE team that led by Anthony Miller and including Lisa Remke, Rita Schwantz, Tiffany Grasky, and also Silbon Clary and Leah Busler. And this is an excellent team that they provide effective and efficient support to the SSE initiative and have been moving the program to new heights all the time. And this progress has only been kind of possible with the support and the guidance of members of the advisory committee that are present here. So today's session takes a moment to reflect on where we have come from, and but also more importantly, to look forward, to identify where there are still barriers to change and where there are opportunities to further advance the role of exchanges. We look forward to your inputs to help shape the work program of the SSE. 1 hour live panel we have. So members of the SSE International Advisory Committee, let me just try to properly introduce them. Anthony, it should be over to you, right? Oh, I do it, okay. Sorry for that. Now, first on the list, I have Tajinder Singh as the Deputy Secretary General of IOSCO, the International Organization of Security Commissions. And then we have Sandy Fisher, Special Advisor and a former Vice Chair, NASDAQ. Sandy has been instrumental in the process of establishment and the working of the SSE. Many thanks, Sandy, for that. We always remember that. And we have Olga Santillo, CEO, Latinx, President, FIAB, and Lo Boon Chai, CEO, Singapore Exchange, Emmanuel Nai Ring Kindi. I'm really sorry if I pronounce it wrong. This is Vice President of International Finance Corporation, IFC. Now, issues to be addressed. The questions that I would like to ask the advisory committee members, I will ask them one by one, and then overall we'll cover towards the end the overall issue areas that we would like to cover today. So my first question is to Nandini, the CEO of WFE. Nandini, the WFE has really been a leader in supporting exchanges to improve their understanding of sustainability issues and working with SSE to mobilize exchange actions on sustainability. So please give us an overview of the types of things that the WFE has been doing and where you see the WFE playing a role in the future. Nandini.
Thank you, James. And really, let me start by congratulating, the SSE, not just for, the great partnership that you have had with us at the World Federation of Exchanges, but also in general for the support and leadership and encouragement you have given our industry. As an industry, I think it's really important for us to hear from organizations like the UN, encourage and have us supported publicly by institutions like the UN, who affirm not just the value of the ESG, of the very considerable ESG mandate that exchanges have had and grappled with for the last 15 years, but also for organizations like the UN to come forward in support of the value of public markets, bearing in mind what an integral role this has in the ESG kind of debate in general. I mean, if you think about the values of public markets, they are all about inclusivity, access for all, transparency, accountability, good governance, disclosure, and appropriate levels of investor protection. And those are all, while we don't talk about them every day in terms of the ESG mandate, that is really at the heart, of what good sustainability practice looks like, right? It's about these important, fair, transparent, and orderly markets. So with that, really, what I wanted to say in my brief remarks, because I'm keen to hear from the other speakers as well, is I wanted to mention perhaps, talk about maybe 3 or 4 themes, which I think are particularly relevant today and will be instrumental in shaping the future for all of us as we look to ESG. The first, and that we are all living, is the mainstreaming of ESG. So those of us around this table have been working on ESG for the last 15 years, perhaps, well before it became mainstream. So what does it mean now that ESG is mainstream? There is a challenge, but there is also such a great opportunity. And those both need to be balanced side by side. More importantly as well, in many markets, especially the exchanges there are many markets last year in our survey, we found that significant, a third of markets exchanges were really, the frontline regulator on ESG. So what does that mean really for all of us as this topic matures and becomes mainstream? So that, it isn't an answer, it's a question really that I leave with all of us to think about. The second is really the value of partnership, and that I think is something that's very close, very dear to all of us around this table. We have had a great partnership with the SSE, and that's important because, as I said, exchanges can't do this alone. We need to have the support of organizations like the UN. We need, for us, the sustainability mandate is an ecosystem conversation. It isn't just about us speaking internally to ourselves. So there's a lot of value in partnership. We're keen to continue to have the partnership. And for us, we really do view as an industry this to be an ecosystem solution or an ecosystem conversation. So keen for that to continue. The third, and this is particularly relevant and pertinent topical today, it's about the derivatives conversation. I'm so glad, I think that Anthony and I spoke about this, I think, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when we were in New York together at that lunch, and Anthony said, Anthony was saying no to the derivatives exchanges, and I said to him, you must let them in, let us show you how at the WFE we can work together, to admit derivatives exchanges into this group. And I'm happy to be here today when the UN formally admits derivatives exchanges into the conversation. And that is, of course, in addition to the joint paper that we did together, which has been presented and has been discussed earlier today and in other forums. So an important part of the conversation today, another chapter for all of us. And then I wanted to talk a little more briefly about two other very important themes that are playing out. I'm sure my other panelists will speak to them. One is about data. I think we need good data. We need clear data. At the WFE, certainly, we've invested in our database. We are now publishing green bond data that is still the biggest part of the market. And over time, that green database will expand further. So there will always be, exchange traded green data sitting side by side, with the more conventional trading data, the data around primary markets, the data around trading, data around market capitalization. You will also get in the WFE database green data. So we look forward to that and to working with all of you around this table. We thank the exchanges that have already begun to contribute that to our database. And then finally, and I'm going to conclude there, that the policy conversation is evolving. That remains an important priority for all of us, for us, the WFE. That's the first thing we're focused on. It's the primary thing we're focused on. And reflecting really on our annual survey, which maps the industry activities now in its 7th year, we look, this year, 5 respondents reported engagement in all 12 listed ESG initiatives, whereas no respondents had no initiatives. So really exchanges are continuing to grow and grow in terms of their engagement with ESG initiatives. So this for us is only a conversation about growth. So with that, let me say thank you and turn it back to you.
Thank you very much, Nadini. The 5 areas that you have made achievements, congratulations to WFE. Now, Sandy, NASDAQ was one of the founding members of the SSE. So the topic of sustainability is something you have been working at for quite a while. And recently, NASDAQ introduced the rule change requiring listed companies to adopt diversity requirements for their boards. What led you to take this step? And how has it been received?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Let me answer that question by saying that I'm very proud of the fact that my former employer, NASDAQ, took that very, very important step. If you had followed the press at the time, you would see the controversy, the extraordinary controversy that mandatory rule request created here in the United States. It wasn't as we call it, a slam dunk. It was controversial. And I have to say, I give enormous credit to Adina Friedman for driving that through and taking the lumps of in the market. People were angry about it, but I think it was the right thing to do. And we went in for a rule, and I was very pleased that the SEC approved it. I've always been a proponent of mandatory rules. The problem in this particular place, we sometimes overregulate, but other times I think when things are of this nature that has a built-in inherent controversial elements to it, that it really needs the regulators to stand up. What you have here and what you have put together at this level and the WFE put together at the board and the context of the WFE, we strive to reach consensus. But you cannot ask people to slit their own throats. There are a lot of countries who rely heavily, for example, on mining and other things that are inherently, let's call it, polluting. But that is the core of their economies. They can't slit their own throats. You can't ask people to put themselves in that kind of situation. And that's why the UN being involved, what you have done, what WFE has done, is that we do it as a collective. And that collective has power to present things, to have them discussed on a global basis. And then when rules are passed that not everyone could normally live with, but they want to be part of a whole, that the fact that things are going to be mandated almost, hopefully, on a global basis, that gives cover to individual exchanges because they are now protected in the sense that if everyone has to do it, then they will do it. And so investment, which is fungible, you can move it around. You can have choices about where you want to invest your money. If the rules are uniform, then it is ultimately easier. It is a slower process. It's a difficult process, but you have hung in, the WFE has hung in. And I think what Adina did is should be the beginning of taking what is the most relevant components of sustainability and have it presented to the International Regulatory Organization, ISO, and they should also then go back to their local regulators and push them towards greater, excuse me, greater visibility and to mandating the core elements of sustainability. This isn't a question of competition. This is a question of protecting the future generations, protecting our planet. And I think we have to be aggressive in doing it, but I think we have to act collectively. But within that, they're going to have to be leaders. And that's why I was very proud of what Adina did.
Thank you, Sandy. Sandy, you mentioned several times the role of regulators. And in fact, you did that even back at early days when the SSE was established, that regulators have to be on board. So Tajinda, IOSCO has, in the past few years, rapidly expanded its focus on sustainability in the context of financial markets. So what are your priority focus areas, and what do you believe the role of securities regulators is in relation to sustainability?
Thank you, James, and Anthony. Thank you for the invitation to this event, and I'm glad to be among friends here, old and new. So you kind of set it up very well. I don't know if it was something you had pre-designed. I don't think so, Sandy and you, but I think you set it up pretty well for me here for regulators, because it is a non-trivial question. Why is IOSCO interested? Why are securities regulators interested? And I think clearly what we are seeing is this flood of investments into ESG and sustainability related products. That's absolutely a good thing. It reflects the growing recognition of the material impact of climate change. And of course, as far as corporates are concerned, that there are the ESG risks, they have an impact on corporate performance. Now, what that has, of course, resulted in is a variety of sustainability reporting frameworks and standards. And that, to start with, was a good thing. But it has now resulted in sustainability reporting that is incomplete and inconsistent across jurisdictions, some of the things that we were just discussing now. And what that does is that it hampers investors' ability to make informed decisions. And it raises concerns around mispricing of assets, and of course gives rise to risks of greenwashing. And therefore, clearly what we need now is trust in the markets. Now, securities regulators are not policymakers. They don't have a policy agenda, usually speaking, in terms of climate change. And personally, a lot of us believe in the thing. But as organizations, IOSCO is not an advocacy organization, in favor of progress on climate change as a broader policy agenda. But clearly, we do get into the picture when trust is needed in the markets, and indeed trust is needed in the markets for sustainable finance to work at scale. Now, let's break it down. What are the core elements of this trust? So as far as investors are concerned, clearly investors need information, they need investor protection. At the level of markets, we were talking about exchanges, markets, you need market integrity. And then from a macro perspective, you need financial stability because of all these things in terms of the transition risks and so on, and physical risks. Financial stability could be impacted. Now, investor protection, market integrity, and financial stability, they are all the objectives of securities regulation. And so if you look at IOSCO core principles, these are the core objectives. And therefore, IOSCO is interested, and because these issues are global, as we were just talking about. Now, that's the reason why we are interested. And we have been doing quite a lot of work in this area. There are 3 key areas in which we have worked this year. Sustainability reporting and disclosure, where we have worked with the IFRS Foundation. Secondly, on greenwashing and asset managers. And thirdly, on ESG ratings and data providers. So we've issued a report on the reporting and disclosure, and then we have issued consultation reports on greenwashing and asset managers, and on ESG ratings and data providers, and we will be publishing final reports very soon. Now, as you can see, the key theme running through these is information. You need complete and consistent information. Investors need that coming from issuers, asset managers also need them, and ESG ratings and data providers are both consumers of this information and providers of information. And that's, in a sense, the lifeblood of markets, the lubricant of markets, and that's what makes markets function. It doesn't stop there, but clearly we thought this is the piece to focus on. And so we published those 3 reports this year. Since this is about information, let me talk about essentially the information piece with regard to issuer disclosure. And that's, of course, where exchanges get impacted, and there's a whole lot of work that is going on, as we heard today, and congratulations to all of you, the SSE, WFE, and everyone who's doing this work. And I should add here, of course, that the WFE is also a member of IOSCO, and Nandini is vice chair of the IOSCO AMCC, the Affiliate Members Consultative Committee, but more importantly, she is chair of the AMCC Sustainable Task Force. So all of this, what we're trying to do in IOSCO is to do something that is joined up, because this is global and needs to be joined up. So on the work that we are doing with regard to issuer disclosure, we've worked over the last year plus very intensively with the IFRS Foundation to make progress towards launching the International Sustainability Standards Board, alongside what they already have, as you know, the International Accounting Standards Board. And we suggested and recommended that the IFRS focus on enterprise value creation and move forward quickly with a climate-first approach. And so the report that we published in June with regard to issuer disclosure on sustainability had pointed out the gaps and inconsistencies that were there. So we had looked at 90 plus market participants in 45 plus countries. So we had said that there are indeed problems of inconsistency, incomparability, and in fact, that could lead to greenwashing, whether by design or not. But we also said that the right solution is the IFRS solution. We had also suggested a few of more micro things, and I'll get into them a little bit more. But in terms of a high level thing, what we did was to say that we should learn from the success that we had 20 years ago with the setting up of the IFRS Foundation, with the setting up of the International Accounting Standards Board that has built, the IFRSs have built a reputation over 2 decades of setting international standards for global markets adopted in 140 plus countries. So what we are coming to is a global baseline that will be established by the standards to be set up by the International Sustainability Standards Board. Very quickly, the 2 elements of this baseline that we were really, kind of quite strong about were content. The content needs to be relevant to investors, to securities regulators, and governance. Now, breaking down a little bit on content, this has been an excellent example, I would say, of public-private partnership, because clearly the IFRS is, at the end of the day, it is a private sector body, but has very strong governance because of the authorities being involved in that. But we've also worked together with the voluntary reporting frameworks that had indeed put these frameworks out. And that has been really, really good work. And in a sense, that work by all these bodies and where they have come together jointly, that is yet another example of how people had really thought people who could normally be seen as competitors actually came together to work. And so we have what we call a running start. A running start that is produced by these, one might call, best of breed frameworks. And that has incorporated expertise and proven content from the most widely adopted frameworks and standards out there. And we know we wanted also the content that helps to deal with greenwashing. Now, so that's on content, but also on governance and robustness. What we've had in the process so far, and we will have once the ISSB is formally set up, is multiple layers of checks and balances between the private sector and public oversight with the participation of securities regulators. And that's where the monitoring board, for instance, is involved, because the IFRS has a 3-tier structure. You have the board that is there, whether it is the Accounting Standards Board or the new Sustainability Standards Board that is overseen by the trustees. And on top of that, and is the monitoring board of authorities that provides the link to the public interest. And that is chaired by IOSCO. So we are ensuring that the standard setting process itself, apart from content, follows due process, has a multi-stakeholder approach, has proper consultations. And then the third thing that I want to talk about here is interoperabilities, because we had recognized, we were also being realistic in terms of what is happening. Firstly, as you heard me say in the beginning, this is focused on enterprise value creation. And there have been criticisms saying, well, it doesn't go far enough. You have these wider things on sustainability. And what we said is, yes, recognize that. And therefore, we have encouraged the IFRS Foundation to set up mechanisms for interoperability with what are those double pillar or wider sustainability impacts, and progress is happening there. The second interoperability is with jurisdictions, because jurisdictions, some of them, we hope a lot of them, will adopt the ISSB standards as they are, but there will be others who would use that more as a baseline and develop their own, on the basis of their own jurisdictional specificities. So what we are saying is that this has to be a baseline, but don't confuse baseline with basic. It is far from basic. So I think that's what we are doing, and that we hope here what we will do going forward is a possible IOSCO endorsement of the standard that will come out hopefully by the middle of next year. And because we did the same thing 20 years ago with the IASB, and we believe that was a game changer there for the IFRSs, and we believe that can be a game changer next year. So then very quickly coming to what we are going forward is that, we've had a lot of these consultations, roundtables, kicking the tires to see that we get to a place where we have the proper reporting infrastructure. We've engaged also with the G20, and in fact, IOSCO was the lead knowledge partner with the G20 Sustainable Finance Working Group, and that has essentially, talked about the work we have done and the path forward for us. Securities regulators have been formally engaged in the standard setting process, and IOSCO's technical experts group is already interacting with the IFRS as if they are setting out a prototype at this moment. As I said, talked about the endorsement that can help with the adoption across IOSCO's global membership. But we don't stop here. There is work going forward where we have already started thinking about assurance, because we will need to be able to ensure that audit standards can be quickly built in this area. Asset managers and greenwashing and ESG ratings and data providers, we will be finalizing the reports. And that will be essentially about asset manager disclosure, but also asset manager risk management along the lines of governance, investment strategy, and metrics and targets. Also at the level of product disclosures, those are the recommendations we will have. Also investor education and supervision and enforcement. And then on ESG ratings and data providers, the interesting thing here is that many of them may not be within the regulatory perimeter. And that is our first recommendation and suggestion, that that regulators consider their regulatory perimeter for their appropriate regulation, and so that there is adequate quality and integrity of the ratings process and avoidance of conflicts of interest. And last but not the least, we will continue to work with our members on issuing supervisory guidance going forward and on capacity building. And as you know, James, we are working with you here, and we have an event going on this week with regard to the growth and emerging markets. And I'm very glad to hear about the work that is happening at the SSE and WFE with regard to the trainings of exchanges and so on. And I'm sure there are lots more things on which we can collaborate and coordinate. Let me stop here. Back to you, James. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Tajinder. It's really a lot. It's really a lot. Congratulations for all these achievements. I'm looking forward to next year's report you are going to launch. Now let me get to Singapore exchanges. Boon Chye, the Singapore exchanges has announced several new initiatives from revisions to its listening requirements to its platform for this nature-based solutions. How does Singapore Exchange see the sustainable finance agenda in Asia evolving? And what role can exchange play to support this evolution?
James, thank you for including me in this panel, and congratulations to you and your team for all the various initiatives. To answer your question, I think in Asia, governments and communities are aware that the region is vulnerable to nature and climate-related risks. In fact, many companies and financiers in our community are already managing this risk. The challenge is how should we think about facilitating Asia's holistic transition to a more sustainable future, and at the same time, balance the diverse region's unique environmental, social, and economic needs. Because in Asia, it is so diverse, there's no one-size-fits-all approach. So as an exchange, we have, I believe, a unique position at the center of the market ecosystem. For SGX, we see our role as a key player in the ecosystem, as a company, as a business, as a regulator of listed companies. We have developed a multi-asset sustainability platform that cuts across a series of elements to facilitate collaboration within the ecosystem. We're also conscious that industries and companies are at different stages of their sustainability journey. So hence, we need to think of how we can support the various stakeholders without labeling anyone. So first, from an ecosystem perspective, we at SGX recently released a guide on credible decarbonization transition. This is to provide corporates with a set of actionable climate mitigation steps. And these steps are: first, measure your carbon footprint; two, set emission reduction targets; third, reduce the absolute emission footprint; fourth, neutralize unavoidable residual emission; and then fifth, compensate your emissions and bring it down year on year; and last but not least, disclose your progress. As a company, we are following our recommendation. James, you mentioned earlier, SGX was the first Asian exchange to commit to a 1.5 degrees Celsius aligned science-based emission reduction target. And second, from a regulatory perspective, we mandated sustainability reporting in 2016, and very pleased that we're seeing encouraging progress since then. And in fact, this is review of sustainability reports from our listed companies actually showed overall improvement in the level of disclosure and also overall increase in the depth and understanding of sustainability reporting. I think that's a really good sign. We're also stepping up on climate-related measures. Our subsidiary SGX Reco recently issued a consultation paper And this is really for a roadmap on climate-related disclosure. We're proposing a phased approach to mandatory climate reporting based on TCFD recommendation. And we want issuers to make disclosures on the TCFD recommendations. And going forward, what will also be important is also from a business perspective, because it's important to position ourselves to better contribute to financing responses to climate change and be able to intermediate the large flow of capitals, which will be a force in financial markets for years to come. So important to support issuers. It's also important to support investors who are paying attention to ESG metrics. And in all of that, sustainability initiatives need to be financed. One report by GFMA and BCG basically suggests that in Asia, we need close to $70 trillion of investment over 3 decades. That's more than half of the investment required globally to achieve the scenario of 1.5 degrees Celsius. And at SGX, we continue to try and build a portfolio of sustainable and transition finance solutions across different asset classes. So in summary, I would think through different facets, we hope to facilitate Asia's holistic transition to a more sustainable future. And at the same time, very important to balance the diverse regional needs in Asia on ESG requirements.
Okay. Thank you, Bu-Chai. This is really impressive. Congratulations. Now I have Olga. Olga, as we know that the uptake of sustainability among the corporates and the providers of finance takes on different characteristics in different parts of the world. So what would you say are the primary features of how sustainability is understood and approached in Latin America? What are the issue areas that are of specific concern?
Good morning, James and Anthony. Thank you for the invitation. I would have to say that same as Singapore has just mentioned, in Latin America, we have approached sustainability differently from other parts of the world. While some of our capital markets are very well advanced in sustainability, some of us have ways to go and do some catching up. And to put this into perspective, I'd like to share with you briefly some of the results that we concluded in the Sustainability Committee of FIAP that was conducted just about 2 months ago. And before I mention that, I'd like to say that FIAP is the Ibero-American Federation of Stock Exchanges and Security Markets. And we grouped 24 members from Latin America and in Spain. And this survey was conducted with the participation of 80% of our members. So we have a lot of information, although we wish we would have had 100% of our members participating in it. Now, to put it into perspective, 58% of our members are members of the SSE, and 80% are in total members either of United Nations Women, Global Compact, GRI, PRI, and or the World Federation of Exchanges. So we do have an important participation of the principles that we need to follow in regards to sustainability. 75% integrate sustainability into the strategic planning of the exchanges, and 50% of our members have dedicated areas within the exchanges, and also 50% of them assign resources to sustainability. 45%, and this is low, and that's something that we're working on, issue sustainability reports on a yearly basis. And 70% of our members have issued green, social, and or sustainable listed issuance within their markets. We have been working with strategic alliances to have more of our members with guidance for the issuance of these type of securities. And as of this moment, we have 10 of our members that do have guidance for the issuance of green, social, or sustainable securities, and 8 of our members have ESG guides. So this is something that we really need to work on at the moment. As I have mentioned earlier, we have ways to go, and Nandini and Tanjinder were talking about this, and it's access to data. I would have to say that not having access to data and having it publicly available is one of our biggest challenges, and we need to work on that. And also the survey, and this is something that I didn't mention, but also the survey gave us results that were not necessarily surprisingly, but it gives us something to work on as an opportunity, and that's in gender equality on boards and in executive levels in our membership, and also having, as I mentioned before, listed companies complying with the transparency that is needed when doing sustainability reporting and disclosure. And this is something that it's very important for us, so we can have also on the investor side the needed information for investors to drive through impact investments. Lastly, we continue to work along with stakeholders and policymakers to promote and embed sustainability within our markets and advance in complying with the Sustainable Development Goals. James, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Olga. Thank you. Emmanuel, as an investor and advisor in emerging markets, what does the IFC see as the role of the exchanges in promoting sustainable development and the ESG standards? What is the benefit for the IFC of working with exchanges and initiatives like our SSE? Emmanuel.
Thank you, James. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. And first, I'd like to join the others, James, in congratulating the SSE for your strong initiatives and thanking you for a strong partnership. Let me also say how thrilled I am to be here amongst so many ESG enthusiasts and to discuss the critical role exchanges play in green, resilient, and sustainable capital markets. I have 3 key messages. So the first is, at the IFC, we believe that increased ESG disclosure is a key element in supporting the creation of sustainable capital markets. We believe that market regulators and stock exchanges play a very critical role in promoting ESG requirements for companies. They act as a lever and amplifier through their issuer base to bring changes to the wider market. I mentioned that there is a growing investor interest in companies that are engaged in sustainable business activities. Investors want to understand how companies are tackling issues such as climate change, gender diversity, or supply chain risk, which may have a material impact on their business. Therefore, we see that there is a clear and urgent need to provide guidance for issuers to improve their ESG disclosures, including on climate. This, we believe, is key in allowing investors and other stakeholders to integrate ESG and climate considerations in their investment decisions. From stock exchanges and regulators, there is an interest in preparing climate disclosure regulation and training for issuers, as well as integrating broader sustainability practices. You've also asked, James, what is the benefit for us as the IFC for working with exchanges and initiatives like the SSE, which leads to my second key message. So we together, IFC and the UNSSE, have joined forces to support regulators and stock exchanges. Let me share some data. Since 2005, IFC has supported the preparation of 145 codes, laws and regulations, and 40 scorecards on corporate governance and sustainability, and also 11 ESG reporting guidelines. The requests from stock exchanges and regulators for tailored technical support, however, keep growing. And last year alone, we supported the development of 20 ESG regulations. So this work continues to require innovation, creativity, and collaboration. To achieve this, in 2018, we entered into an agreement with yourselves, the UNSSE, to support member exchanges in developing ESG reporting guidelines. And our latest collaboration, therefore, is aimed at helping the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, which was referred to earlier, to develop their fast ESG reporting guidance and supplement on climate disclosures. This project will surely pave the way for many other markets in Africa and beyond to adopt a similar approach, which is really important. As a foundation to our work and approach, we're using one of our flagship tools, which is the IFC Disclosure and Transparency Toolkit, coupled with the UNSSE Model Reporting Guidance, which we think is critical. Now, using these tools, 11 stock exchanges and regulators launched their national ESG reporting guidelines, and over 4,000 people at 70 capacity building events from around the world have been trained, which is an incredible achievement. This work is feeding into the development of IFC's ESG disclosure and transparency online platform, which will provide additional guidance and resources to support exchanges, regulators, and other capital markets participants. And our teams and partners, we believe, will be busy in the coming months as 23 additional stock exchanges have requested support, including stakeholders from emerging markets. My third key message is actually related to the future, which is that we want to expand our collaboration with the UNSSE to increase the capacity of exchanges to address sustainability-related issues, such as climate. So in looking ahead, we would like to expand collaboration with the UNSSE and the Climate Disclosure Standards Board, CDSB, with a new workstream on climate disclosures, training, and guidance. I'm thrilled to announce that we also intend to strengthen our collaboration with the UNSSE through signing a cooperation agreement in the near future. We believe that doing so will expand our partnership from the current ESG disclosure workstream to include research, capacity building, and technical support on climate disclosure, gender equality, and SMEs. So I'd like to once again commend the SSE UN initiative for a decade of impact and progress. We at IFC are committed to working together with you to help stock exchanges become market leaders on sustainability and transparency for the years to come. Thank you. And over back to you, James.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you for the collaboration, and thank you for your leadership and supporting for the future collaboration. We're really grateful to you and to IFC for the support. This is the first round. We have 8 minutes to go, and I was told that by the time at 4 o'clock we'll be cut off whether we finish or not finish. I have 3 questions for all of you. How do we collectively work to ensure that we continue to promote the incorporation of sustainability considerations into the capital markets to ensure that the markets support the sustainable development agenda? And what are the key issues that SSE should be focused on in the coming years? How can SSE best support markets in their sustainability efforts? You can pick up one of the questions and then just advise us. I think this is guiding the SSE in the future work. So whoever wants to speak first, and just raise your hand. I think Sandy raised his hand several times. I know you're adjusting your camera, but I just put you on the spot.
I was going to say, I was adjusting the camera. Well, I would say that, first of all, I think the report from IASCO and what's going on in the world, around the world, is very encouraging. A little slow, but these things do take time. I think it's very, very important in our efforts to get people to voluntarily go along, as well as mandating people to go along, is to provide some exchange. If you talk to companies, particularly the smaller companies, those companies will tell you that they are overburdened with massive regulatory obligations and reporting requirements that take up a significant percentage of their time. I think exchanges, starting with the regulators, as well, they have to think about how we can limit or reduce the totality of the regulatory burden as we add additional obligations to them on the reporting side. So, I mean, they're, you know, the regulatory requirements are like these massive tomes of what people are supposed to require. Some of them are completely obsolete. So I think we have to go through them literally country by country, but starting on the international side to try to make what is relevant sustained and what isn't eliminated, so that we reduce the burdens on companies in that regard. The other major resistance on the part of a lot of companies is that they're concerned about liabilities that they will take on, because once you have a disclosure requirement, it could be subject to litigation. Now, that's a tougher one as far as I'm concerned, because you have to deal with the issue of it either is correct or it's not correct. You've either included everything you're supposed to or you haven't. And I don't think that there's much a way around it. Once you have assumed the responsibility of a public company, you have responsibility to provide adequate and not only accurate, but important disclosures. If you are a company that has inherent to your objectives, perhaps mining, you're going to pollute. And I think that that has to be put right out there and be honest about it and deal with it in a disclosure way, and in the ways that has been talked about earlier by some of the others, which is to be candid and not expect, you know, the old proverb of Rome being burnt in a day. It's a process. But I think that the regulators and the exchanges themselves should work very, very hard at reducing the totality of the overall burdens that we put on companies to be public companies, not just in the area of sustainability, but across the whole panoply of issues that we have to deal with. There have to be rewards as well as punishments.
Thanks, Sandy. And then I have Tajinder.
Yeah, I think.
Well, let me give you an example. The annual reporting, the reporting rates, I mean, reporting dates. So EU has a 6-month. In the United States, we have, you know, quarterly. It's insane. You go from one quarterly report to another. If we moved it all to a semi-annual basis and it was global, it would be an accepted standard. And for those who think you get less disclosure, you don't get less disclosure, because the rules say very clearly if something material happens with your company, you have to disclose it at any time. So that's a very good example, in my view, of excessive regulatory burdens.
Okay.
I guess what Sandy says very valid, very good points. James, I will add, I think for the part of SSE, maybe look, reporting is difficult, but if we all could collectively have some baseline, I think that'd be good. And then secondly, I think through this call, we hear a lot about data, investors, issuers. So certain data, I think we all should find that it should be common good. And maybe the SSE could play a role in governing market infrastructure or exchanges with the WFE, so that initiatives can all be extended to very like-minded partners.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Kunchai. I'm taking note of that. Now, Tajinder.
No, very, very quickly, I know we have just a couple of minutes to go. So I wanted to mention 2 things. One is really with regard to this disclosure. Well, there we are. I think on the disclosure thing, I think I would really encourage all of us here really to encourage on our part, taking from the point Emmanuel was saying, you know, using the agency of the exchanges to encourage issuers really to go down the path of the global standard. And there is, I think Sandy's point about burden is there, but I think the other point that the industry hates, other than burden, is unpredictability. And I think, and therefore it will be good, you know, to be able, because we are working towards a global baseline, and there will be already a prototype of that will be published very shortly. I think that gives you predictability in terms of where the global standard is going to be. And I think it will be good if we can actually use our agencies to encourage issuers to go down the path, because it will also create a virtuous cycle in terms of, because there will be time before regulators all over the world adopt regulations. And frankly, the more that we are able to follow the global standard, the better it is, because that also reduces market fragmentation, and and therefore reduces burden as well, in terms of these cross-border reporting things. So that's point number one. Point number two is really with regard to capacity building. Just hearing all of the things that are going out here, I think it can never be enough. The capacity building that goes towards encouraging issuers and exchanges and all of that to be able to go down. Again, I will make a plug for the international standard here to build capacity in that direction, and of course to join forces in that area. So thanks.
Thank you. Anthony, you have the last word. A few.
Well, thanks a lot. I'll be brief. I've been taking lots of notes, and I mean, each of you are part of this advisory committee because you do play a very strong role in supporting the work of the SSE. I think my final words would just be to say that in the last few years, the SSE has become more and more demand driven. Much of the work that we're doing now is because of demands coming through yourselves or other organizations within our network. And that, we have limited resources, so there's only so many things we can do. So what rises to the top comes based on the feedback of organizations such as those on the call today and other members of our network, and we appreciate that. So please do always reach out to us if there's anything we can do to provide assistance, and we're happy to do that.
Okay. Thank you, Anthony. Once again, on behalf of the board of the SSE, my colleagues, and also at UNCTAD, I wish to express our gratitude to all of you, not only for participating in this event and contributing your thoughts and suggestions, but also for the support over the long time. And we still have a long way to go, and still count on your support and your collaboration. And in case you need anything from our side, please do let Anthony and me know, and we'll do our best to support your work and your course. Thank you very much. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.